So today I want to share a new project that I started, and the goal of this project is to start building it in public. So in my terms, that means that I will do regular updates on YouTube especially, where I go into a few different topics. And those are what has been done in the last week or weeks, what are the current metrics look like, what's coming next, and then also we go into the implementation details, so how I code, what I use, and so on. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is what has been done, or what am I actually building. So what I'm building is an app that is in the scope of digitizing families or households. So there will be an app around that. So the first thing that I start with is actually just a shopping list, which is also tailored a bit to grocery shopping. So in my case, it will be a web application because actually I'm not a huge fan of especially app stores. The web has to win. So this app will be a progressive web app at some point, might also have some offline capabilities. So let's have a look into the things. So right now what you can do is sign in. So I'm using Clerk for that. And then you kind of have like a simple onboarding where you would create your family. So let's do that. And then you don't have a dashboard yet, but the focus of the last week was the grocery shopping list. So let's maybe switch to English. So it will also be in two languages, German and English, because German is basically the land I'm coming from. So I might have it easier to get some people using it there. So what you have is the shopping list. So there's the first shopping list where is no item on it. So you can add the first item. So let's take bananas, I don't know, 2. And then you add it. So what you have here is basically a list that has groups. So the idea of the groups is that you can kind of set up the layout of the grocery store you're buying. So when you come into the grocery store, what I always found is it's annoying if you have an app where you just have basically every item on it, and you have to scroll through to see like, is there some fruits maybe on top of the list or on the bottom of the list. So the idea is that you can create groups. So when I know I come into a store that has the vegetables and the fruits were coming basically at first, so I can also have that group on the first place. So what you can do is down below here. So obviously the layout is meant for mobile usage. You can add a new group. So let's say it's fruits. Then maybe also vegetables, sure. So then you have those two groups. So it's not yet sortable. I have some ideas about that to have maybe different store plans that you can apply to this list. But now you have those groups. And then what you can do is you can now add, for example, or maybe move this one to fruits, save it. So now it's there at the fruits group. And then what you can also do is obviously you can create new lists as well. As you can see here, the idea is that you can also choose a template. So the template should be, for example, the supermarket template that should already pre-fill a lot of groups and items that you can potentially have in the groups, so that you kind of have something you can start with, especially for like grocery stores. So the category itself, there are two different kinds of items. So there's the list item, which is now this bananas thing, which typically is the one that you will be using when going to the shop. You can just check it and then you can also undo it. So it's basically just a time of 5 seconds or something. After you checked it, it just takes 5 seconds until the check mark is persisted as well on the database. So then for the categories, what you have is you can also go into the group of items itself, and then you can create kind of per system items. So for example, I could put the apple here, banana, and I don't know, melon, something like that. And now those items are stored in the group of fruits. So if you have the list, so there are no list items, so to say, but if you now look into the group itself, there are items, which is apple, banana, melon. melon. So what you can do is basically you can go through the fruits group, and then what you can do is you can just add those to the list of shopping. So this is like your personal store, whatever, stored items. So for example, then you can add it. So you want to have like 2 bananas and let's say 1 melon. And then in the group fruits from the list Einkaufsliste, if you go back, they are obviously added here as well. Yeah, and then the template that I mentioned, that should be that if you have fruits, obviously it should be pre-filled with a lot of stuff. And then another thing that was done is that when you add an item now, you have a search engine behind, so you can type apple, and then if you select it, you would already have the category where it's in stored, and then you can add it. And then of course you can also, I don't know, add this, you can add an item multiple times into your list, so you can have multiple list items of the same item, so to say. So yeah, so that's basically what has been done so far. So there's mostly the things about the shopping list. Then you can obviously have some more, I don't know, birthday list maybe, and then you can I don't know, you can just add random things there as well. You can have you can create your own groups and so on and so on. So yeah, so that's basically what has been done so far. In terms of metrics, so there are none yet. So I haven't really thought about what I want to basically look into first. So one idea is that the first thing that I want to achieve is to have something like 10 active test users. So that will be like free users, which won't pay anything. So active in the sense of uses the app at least once per maybe 2 weeks. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but if you really use that app, you would go shopping maybe once a week or maybe once every 2 weeks, but you will at least also add items to it. So maybe active more or less means use it at least once per week. I don't know. So to get 10 active test users, I guess I need to have maybe 20 signups, and then maybe reach out to 40 people, like have 40 invites. Yeah, I'm not so sure if I get that done, but let's see. So, and the question is, when would I want to have those? So it's September, end of October. I don't think I can do that because I really don't have that much time. So maybe end of November. Let's see. Let's just put it like this. So that this is basically, yeah, that will be the goal, to get active test user, just to get tests. So, and then obviously, yeah, what's next for that? I need to have something ready. So that would be next week, I guess. So what I would want to continue doing is, so there are some features missing. So feature-wise, what I still want to have, which I'm working on right now, is the template stuff, so that I can basically create an app, create a list pre-filled, because I think that's what I will test and people will test first, is like using it as a grocery store list, and then also sorting the groups to kind of mimic the store layout. So let's write that down. So have the template for list creation done. I would also need to invite family members, because I for sure want to invite my wife to the list, so she can use it as well. And then sorting of groups. Yeah, and then what I want to have is a shopping mode. So basically, when you are in the store, the screen should stay active. Not sure how I would do it in the web app, but the screen should stay active and not basically go into basically auto turn off, so to say, because that's annoying. Then you always have to, open your iPhone again or your phone again and see. So that's something that I would want to have. If it's doable, it should be very easy. And then there's another thing that I'm thinking, but maybe that's optional. If you would start the shopping mode, let's say you have the list, and then you start the shopping mode, you would select where you're going shopping. So for us, for example, we have like 2 different grocery shops where we would usually go shopping. So they could be an Aldi in Germany or like a Rewe. It's just 2 different types of supermarkets. And then what you would do is you would select Aldi, and that would basically order the item groups accordingly. So because the store layouts are different, so when you get into those stores, the fruits and vegetable stuff is first. That's both of them. But then, for example, at one store, the cool stuff like milk and those things are coming much later. And then in this store, they are coming directly after the fruit and vegetable stuff. So I would want to basically start shopping, and then you decide what store it is, and then it sorts it by that. But I think it's not that crucial, because the first people will anyway just to go to one store. Yeah, and then obviously a very important thing is deploy to production. So I have a Kubernetes cluster that I will be using on that. So there's just some configuration on that stuff to get it actually on production. And then I would also need to, I kind of want to restrict the sign up stuff. But maybe I will just hide it behind a weird link that I will send for people so they can register. I don't know. But this is basically the package for what I need to do until so that I can have like the first test users, and then let's see. I guess things will pop up and stuff will not work, and more work will be there. Okay, so that's the plan for next, let's say, week maybe. Okay, so that's basically the part on what I've been done and what's coming next. So that's the part of what I've been doing and what's coming next. So the next part will be going into the code. So that might not be interesting for some people, but I'm pretty sure it's interesting for everyone who's like doing solopreneurship or building in public, because normally those people tend to be like me, coders as well. So let's have a look into the code. So right now it's basically just one Git repo. So what I'm running is Docker Compose as always for the database. It's a MariaDB, because I have Galera MariaDB cluster in my Kubernetes cluster that I will also use for this app. And then Menu for file storage locally, because in production I will use S3 for files. And then there is a Redis. Not sure, so I think I'm not really using it right now. So it will be used as because I'm hosting my Next.js app in my Redis cluster, and then you need something for shared state, which is for me Redis. And then for the search engine, I'm using Melee Search. Obviously that's complete overkill, but I mean, let's start right from the beginning. So there's a Melee Search running as well. And then, I'm using the infrastructure, I'm using Terraform, but this is mostly just for an AWS S3 user. And that's kind of it, because the actual infrastructure is in my basically company infrastructure repo, where the Kubernetes cluster lives as well. At some point I will also, I guess, show how the Kubernetes cluster is working and set up. It's actually set up on Hetzner, my go-to hosting provider, because it's great and super cheap. So that's basically where that will live. So Terraform, there's not much going on there. And then I kind of have a docs folder. That's basically where I put the work that I want to do. And everything. So I kind of also have a Notion, as you saw, but for this project I will just have everything here. And then I separate it by features. So there's obviously a lot of things that I'm thinking about that I would want to build. But the one thing that I'm working on right now is obviously the purchase list. And it's just like a markdown list of things that I want to do and still have to do. So this is living here, like my project management approach. It's kind of lean, but it should be. And then there's one thing that I found already that I had to do is like a wording. So because I even in the last one and a half weeks or so, I kind of had like 2 major refactorings in a way, because I get confused very fast. So the idea is that I kind of have domains. So the domain that I'm in right now is purchase. So everything about purchase, which is kind of the shopping list right now. And then within that domain, what we saw is we have lists, then we have item groups, and then we have items and list items. And the distinction between items and list items is list items are those that are actually on a list that you can basically check. And then the items are the ones that you can see in the groups, and then you can pick from to create a list item if you want. And then another thing is that before I always added the purchase to the name, so we would have purchase list, purchase item group, purchase item, purchase list item. But what I will do is basically have purchase always as a prefix when I'm outside the domain of purchase, but when I'm within the domain, I would basically leave it. So so just thoughts on that about how I would or how I'm implementing it. And then we have the Next.js app. So its frontend is actually not correct because it's like full stack backend and frontend. And here we have internationalization. So there's the translation stuff. It's basically just grouped in app, like some higher level areas, and there's the domain purchase, and then everything goes here. Onboarding there as well, family as well. And then for the database, I'm using Prisma. For the schema and database access, Prisma, I don't know, it just gives you so much, and it should be way performant enough for everything that I'm doing with that app. And then we have the app structure as well. So I'm using Next.intel for translation, which is pretty nice. And what you would do there is you can also translate the routes, and then you kind of have a routing file where you define the routes. And then you can, for example, have the sign-in route and then the translations for it. So in German, it is einloggen, and so on. And then the nice thing also about that is that this then is also typed. So before I always had like a routes const file where all the routes would be in to get the to not basically type the text like the string of the route, but with Next.intel you get that also for free, which is pretty nice. And then the structure is more or less, I have the database folder, there you can also see the purchase domain, and there's nowhere basically I'm using Prisma to access the database directly, but there's always this basically database layer if you want, because it's also especially important because if you create items, so for example, if I create an item, I also need to make sure that I update the index in Meilisearch. So if I would basically do that stuff like using Prisma directly somewhere in some actions or components or something, I would easily miss for example, updating the index and things like that. So basically everything that goes to the database, read and write, should always be being done via this database layer, whatever. So I can also have the Meilisearch stuff there as well. And then the components, it's very basic. So there's a UI folder that's more or less always the ShadCN stuff, since I'm using ShadCN for the most parts. And then whatever I do myself as reusable components, I just put into the components folder right now. At some point I might structure it, but right now I don't. And then the app, obviously, there is an API, so I have some endpoint to kind of do stuff with the search index, for example, initialize it, that I will also do if I deploy it to production and so on. So there's just a simple API key to access this. And then you have the translatable app itself, so everything lives into the local dynamic path. And here we have some things in a simple layout. So this is like a group, so this won't be inside the path or the URL. And then, but you can specify this specific layout for this. And I use that, for example, for onboarding, sign out and stuff. So there's just basically nothing happening, just that it's centered. And then there will be a website at some point as well. And then there's the app. So obviously there's the app folder, and then /app is everything that is you kind of after you logged in. So that's basically where the app lives. And then now you can see there's the purchase list. So that's kind of synonym to the purchase domain if you want. And so then here you have, I use the pattern that I use, the components within that domain, so to say, and I have that also in the folder. So basically this is the file-based router, but then also you can do in Next.js, have that being part of the URL, but then you can also have different folders there as well. So yeah, it's naturally sorted like this. And then what you will see is like every component that I use, even down below, will be in the components folder on the first level of that domain if you want. And then as you can see here now, you have the item group, list item, and lists. So that's basically equivalent to the naming here. Those are the components that I'm using. And then I also have actions. So I separated into multiple files. This is the item action, item group action, list item actions. So that's also equivalent to that. Also that's reflected in the database. So in the database in purchase, I also have item group, items, list, item, lists. So everything kind of is concise as of yet. I mean, it's very trivial and simple app right now. So let's see how long it will be as tidy. But yeah, that's basically how it's being done. And then for the forms, as you can see also there's a purchase action still. So there's stuff in here, obviously that has to go away, but I started with just one file, but then already kind of refactored it into multiple ones. Yeah. So one thing that might be worth looking into is the forms. So there is a great blog post on forms. Yeah, I think this one it is. Next.js forms with server actions. Yeah. So this is a pretty great post actually. And I'm kind of going that direction. So I'm not using, at least not yet, using a forms library or something, because I'm not sure if I really need that. But this basically gives you a lot of things, good stuff. Good stuff to get decent form handling. And the way it works for me, let's have a look if I have one. So this is item add, I don't know. So obviously I'm using form state from React. And then you have your update action. And then what you also have is then empty form state, but that's defined. So that's the same for every form. You would have a status, message, field errors, and timestamp. So this is basically everything as mentioned in the blog post earlier. And then what you can also do is use toast message. So you pass the form state here. And then this one basically, if you use it, it handles showing the toast success or error messages automatically, because that's where the timestamp is also relevant, because it's basically it's checking for the timestamp that was set, so you can react and not repeat the same stuff over and over again. So that's pretty neat. And then I also started using some more hooks. For example, use form reset. This one is nice because so as you saw in the app, let's maybe have a look. When I want to add items, I want to do that quickly. So I want to add an apple again. And when I hit enter now, I selected the one. But if I hit enter now, what happens is the form is resetted and the focus is still set to this one. So let's say I put 2 apples here. And then I create, the form is resetted, but the focus is set already automatically to the one that I want to have be focused. And this is something that the use form reset handles for me. So I can optionally pass a name input ref. So that's basically for focusing it again. And then also the form state is being used more or less the same as in useToast to see, okay, if it was successful, then I reset the form. So that's pretty neat. And I have one other one. Yeah, use form hooks. So it's actually not the library which also exists, but it's basically just that. So you can add the form state and then you can add an on error and on success callback. And that sometimes need to, for example, close the modal. I think that's where I use that one right now most of the time. Let's see if I can find something. Use form hook. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, exactly. So it's basically just, okay, on success, I just close the modal. I mean, that's the most, the use case that I'm using it for, but could also be others. And I didn't want to mix and match it. I mean, obviously, I could also have put it somewhere in the use form state and stuff, but I didn't want to do it. So I also had it at some project in the use toast message, but yeah, sometimes I don't use the toast message. So yeah. So that's the forms handling stuff, and that's most of the app actually. Yeah, so that's how it is looking right now. And we got through that. Yeah, so so that's it for the update of my new pet project, which will be built in public. So I kind of try to do this regularly. Also put some social pressure on it, at least for me myself, to keep at it. The app will be called Kin Vivo, by the way. It's like kin for family and vivo for life or something. So like family life. I don't know. So yeah, if you got something out of it, let me know. Give me feedback, obviously. And if you have questions, let me know as well. Give me a like, as always. Subscribe and do all that great stuff. That's it. Thank you. Cheers.